Welcome back to another episode of the Millennial Gems podcast. I'm your host, KILLA, and today, at the top of the year, a very special guest with us today. I would like to consider this guy right here, I would say almost like a mentor in a way to me. As I've taken my journey through the fitness industry, I would say this is actually he's the Michael Jordan to my Kobe, is what I would like to call him. This guy, entrepreneur, CEO, strongman, bodybuilder, former bodybuilder, athlete, husband,
current triathlete,
husband, Spartan. Yep. This man do everything, Spartan. Man. So he got a lot of titles. But anyway, I want to introduce y'all to Nathaniel Young. What's going on, my guy?
What's going on, guys? Mr. LTI here. Former just Mr. LTI. There's a Mrs. LTI now, so I can't just speak for myself no more. It's a family unit here, but I'm excited to be here. Thank you for taking time to listen to us here at the Millennial Gems podcast. This is my first podcast, so, this is going to be fun. And, I'm excited to, again, give back and almost pioneer in a way, be one of the founding members of Millennial Gems, be one of the first people that gets to record on this podcast for this year and also for the great beginning. So congratulations to Killa too, because last time I checked, this is a multi-business owner. So he gave you my resume. Let me give you his resume, because he's not just Alpha Killa. There's more. There's layers to Alpha Killa. There's Alpha Killa Athletics. And that was truthfully the original AK Killa. We are now well-being. We moved past AK. It is well-being athletics. And then on top of that, it is also Millennial Gems.
I've quite a few transitions, but and believe me, I wouldn't have gone through those transitions had it not been for you, to be honestly, you're honestly the person who actually sparked me to kind of take on like this journey here, to really, like establish like a brand, or kind of like really like establish like who I am and like what I want my mission to be, on this planet. So,
Awesome. I'm glad I can help you with that. As I've always told you, you have to, when it comes to, being a business owner, an entrepreneur, the first thing you have to know who your customer is. That was one of our first conversations we ever had was, who is your actual customer? I remember I asked you 3 times in a row. I gave you 3 chances, and you gave me I was like, well, who's your customer? And you just like, right. Oh, well, I'm going for athletes. I was like, yeah, okay. Who is your customer? And I remember like I caught you there because you were like, well, it could really be anybody. It's like there are key things you look for when you're trying to build a business, and number one is understanding who that customer is. What does that customer look like? What is their life scenario? Like, what is the story? I mean, the story should all be pretty consistent. And then once you know who that customer is, then you know what product they would like, what product they would need, and that's what product's going to answer a problem that they currently have. You become that person's solution per se. And then it becomes very easy to sell and have them buy into what you're selling.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, I had this conversation with Dre, I think a few weeks ago, just really making sure, like establishing like who your audience is. Yeah. Because, the more people you help, the bigger you'll become. Mm-hmm. But let's get into it. So first thing I always like to ask, every guest, you're the first one being at the top of the year. I always like to kind of just gauge, what's happened in maybe, like the past like 6 months or maybe even like the past 30 days for you. But so far we're about we're about 8 days into the year so far. So yeah, you could probably just talk about maybe like the last like 6 months of like 2022. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling physically, mentally, and how's the brand been? Like, how has LTI been?
Absolutely.
Over the past 6 months.
Absolutely. So I'll take it actually in two. I'll take it in two strides. So how LTI has been, and then how I've been. So for the past 6 months, actually, I've been doing a lot better than I was. You know, as you know, I'm newly married. For those who don't know, I'm newly married. I got married in February of 2022. So I'm actually, it's already coming up on like my 1 year anniversary, which is crazy. It's been that fast. But you know, where I was about 6 months ago, things were honestly starting to click. I was starting to, one, understand my wife more, which, you know, helps. Communication is key. I was starting to understand what I need to do to, you know, be my best self. And in regards to being my best self is what helps me truly be healthy. So
Right.
a lot of people also don't know, and this is where part two comes into play. When I met my wife and I decided that this is who I wanted to marry, she was already actually leaving Boston. She was going to move to Florida for good. And it's like, you know, I really starting to got to know her. And, you know, I was like, this is definitely the woman because I just knew right off the bat. So it was like, well, I'm not going to lose this. You know, I'm not like, I have to explore the unknown. In Boston, I know if I put enough work in, if I put the hours in and I grow the business, I could absolutely grow the business and I can eventually scale it. That's something that is very much, I can see that.
Right.
You only get love, you know, love comes around once and you never know. That was the unknown for me, and that I gravitated towards that. So my choice to personally dissolve my business on paper and leave LTI, it was a hard decision for me. And, you know, when I dissolved it and I left LTI in Boston, I was a little bit lost for, you know, the first few months living here in Florida. I was lost probably for like the last, not 6 months, but up until like that 6 month mark, I was pretty lost, confused. I wasn't doing strongman anymore. I wasn't training clients anymore. I have a regular 9 to 5 now. But I was trying to find out, well, I still love this. This is still my passion. I definitely want to go back to it one day, but I have to do it in a different, and it has to be different, you know, because that's not about me anymore. I can't do what I used to do when I was just a single person. I have another person to think about. I have a family now. So how do I let that part of LTI grow is where I'm at. You know, how does LTI evolve? You know, how does LTI evolve with all my new roles, my new responsibilities, my new blessings, being able to just leave and then start fresh all over in a new state. And everybody gets to do that. You know, that's a great opportunity just then and there. How do I exercise again? You know, how do I put myself in the same shoes all my clients used to be in, you know, doing the 9 to 5. And then how do you still find time to exercise and be healthy? Like you kind of get to experiment. Well, how do I actually use my process, but on myself? And that's kind of where I started to find gaps or things that I would improve. So it's like I'm working on essentially what I want LTI to become. Because I loved LTI as much as I loved it. It had its flaws. It had the things that I would love to do over. And now having the experience, having the growth, and then also having the support of my wife, I know it's ultimately very possible when the right time comes, you know. For now, I definitely probably wouldn't, I can't give it away when I'll be bringing LTI back, but I can say for sure when LTI does come back to the table, LTI will be, God willing, much more polished, much more refined, and it won't just be Nate. There will be a whole team in place if I do bring LTI back. So, you know, yeah.
Spoken, so it shall happen.
Got to speak it into existence. You know, and you know, with me, when there's no words coming out of you already know something's coming. It just pops up, and then boom, there it is.
No, absolutely. That's the way to work. Just work in silence, and then just magically appear out of nowhere.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So, if for those who don't know that, you know, this is a self-improvement podcast. So, how do you get 1% better every day? Mm-hmm. And what tactics, what resources are you doing every day to, you know, really, you know, become a better man, become a better husband?
Yeah, absolutely.
Better athlete.
Well, absolutely, better athlete. I'll take all three in strides. I'll start with the easiest one. When it comes to being a better athlete, the biggest thing is education. Understanding what sport you're doing, understanding what you want your body to do, you know, come, you know, race day or, event day, understanding the ins and outs. What is actually needed? What are the tasks at hand? So when I think about triathlon, it's 3 disciplines. You have your swim, you have your bike, and then you have your run. So all 3 of those have to be trained. And to effectively do them, you also have to, in conjunction, eat the right things. What I used to eat as a strongman didn't work when I tried to start doing triathlon training. I was actually finding myself gaining weight, trying to eat the same way I used to eat, but training like a triathlete. And it was mind-boggling because I'd say, man, I just had a week full of volume and I'm up 3 pounds. I'm pushing almost 220. And it was like, I have to learn more. I have to educate myself. So that involves buying books. That involves going back to the books, studying the books,
Right.
figuring out what other great coaches have taught, and figuring out what that means for me and applying it to my life. So waking up at a certain time, eating different foods, eating foods I never ate before, learning new ways of training. I don't know if you, I'm sure, you're still obviously coaching, but there's been lots of, you've heard of the 80-20 principle. I never used the 80-20 principle ever in any of my training facets. So actually applying that has been humbling. I mean, when you really take 80-20 seriously, that is hard. That is extremely hard to do.
To be honest, I don't even think I might have learned it early on, but I've never. I'm gonna say for myself, honestly, I've kind of neglected it for quite some time. It only wasn't until maybe 2021 that I kind of really started thinking, okay, maybe I need to implement this. Maybe I need to actually start taking this more serious.
And it is what's so hard about it is it takes a long time to get good at 80-20. I have been in the 80-20 method now about 4 months, and I'm just now starting to see my mile time start to go down. But for the longest, my mile times went up. I mean, I remember at my slowest, I was at a 14:50, 14. I'm like, I could walk faster than this to keep but it took time. It's one of those things. Once you take the time and you get it, it's like, wow, this is really good. This morning, I had a 20-mile bike ride, and then I had to hop off and do a 5K, which is, called brick training in triathlon.
Right.
Being able to keep my heart rate below 150 for both those activities, that was when I was like, whoa, it's actually working. I'm putting out these numbers, but my heart isn't working so hard. It's not spiking. I don't feel like I'm burning matches per se. So, there's definitely value in it if it's your sport. But again, I wouldn't have learned that had I not, done the research and come to understand what is being asked of me when I do a triathlon. What do I need to do? What do I need to eat? And that comes back to education with it. But, as I said, that's the easy part. The hard part is about being a better person overall, the outside of fitness and being a better husband. The biggest aid for me, and I'm going to speak for myself, the biggest thing that's helped me improve as a person as well as a husband for me, the study of the Bible. I was actually baptized as Jehovah's Witness in the December of 2020. So I've been baptized about 2 years now. So a lot of my, my spiritual growth, my spiritual progress, and my growth as a husband, my ability to care for my family comes from the publications I read from jw.org, comes from daily Bible reading, personal prayer and meditation, and doing my research. When I have questions about life, when I have questions about how can I connect with my wife better? How can I be a better communicator? I look to the scriptures. I try to find out and get God's opinion on how I can do that. So for me, I look to jw.org and I stick close to the organization. That's how I've improved.
Heard you. Oh, that's actually a very interesting answer. I don't think I've had somebody tell me that they've looked to the scriptures for self-improvement. So I'm glad you provided that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's go back in time a little bit here. So take me back to the beginning, when you kind of got into the fitness, the industry here. When did you kind of start training, and when did you feel okay, this is something that this is a lane that I want to get in, and then I want to take it further. Take me back to the beginning. When was it that you discovered fitness was this is my thing, this is the lane I'm trying to be in?
when that phrase "fitness is my passion" became like actual reality. I know that I can tell you the exact day. This goes back to 2000 and let's see, 2009 actually. So in 2008, I was going through a very large stint of depression with my life at the time. I wasn't doing very well in school academically, despite trying really hard and obviously seeking out the help of mentors and doing extra assignments at work. My grades really were poor, and that affected my personal confidence. That affected me on a mental note and an emotional level. I also, my ego was bruised because I didn't find myself. I just felt like I was that goofy guy in '08. Like I was just kind of the nerdy, the unattractive. Like I was looking at this guy, I was checking for this guy. You know what I'm saying? But I said to myself, you know what? If I could at least look like I had strong, if I could look as strong as I wish I was, maybe then I'll believe I'm strong. So consequently, I fell in love with bodybuilding because bodybuilding is all about aesthetics and symmetry and looking strong. And for me, it was like instant gratification. If I do this workout 3 days a week and I eat these meals, I always will look the way I want to look. And that happened. It was a proven track record at age 16. When I trained a certain way, when I ate a certain way, I got results. I couldn't fix anything else in my life. I couldn't make girls like me. I couldn't make my grades better no matter how hard I studied. But if I went to the gym and I put in this work, I was going to have a bigger arm. I was going to have bigger thighs. I was going to have a wider chest. It was a guarantee. So naturally, I went towards what I was really good at, and I kept doing it. And people started to notice that. And, then all of a sudden, you become the person. People come asking you questions. Hey, how'd you do that? Like, where'd you even come from? How'd you get your chest to that size? How'd you lift? And then, people start asking you these questions. You say, well, I'll show you. Like, I do a push-up or I do a squat and it's just like, well, my shoulder, that kind of bothers my shoulder. And I say, well, I know we could figure something out. And then, I go do research. So I say, well, what else? What could I help? What can make this person's chest bigger, but it's not going to affect their shoulder? And then I start reading all these books, and I'm like, oh, well, what if I actually took those exercises and I used them on myself? So it became, this thing where I just got obsessed with learning how I could develop the body, how you can manipulate, power zones, how you can manipulate food, how you can use tools to create a physique, create what somebody wants, help somebody achieve something that they never had. I'll actually show you what I'm using to hold up my laptop. This is actually the first book that I was given by one of my coaches back in the day at age 17. I mean, most of us all know this from strength and conditioning.
I definitely remember that book.
Everyone who's done strength and conditioning.
Oh my God.
And the thing, I've had this book. I read that book cover to cover so many times at age 17. So I had that already marinating. So when it came to college, I mean, I'm like, we're reading this book again? And then, and then I remember one guy said, well, I'll pay you. And I was just like, what, you want to just work out with me? And I was like, fine. And yeah, I end up with I think it was at the time, $20. And, I was like, I like making money, so I mean, sure, I'll tell people what to do. But, that was, again, age 17. I didn't really have that business mindset. I was just kind of more amazed that, oh yeah, somebody would pay me to do something that I already love. And it never clicked like, hey, that actually could be a business, one day, until I eventually ran into a person. I thank him every day for this. This guy, his name is Jarrett. He's a multi-business owner. He's also a property manager. So he's very business minded. And he told me that you have to learn how to market yourself. You have to not only learn how to market yourself, but understand the value you bring to people's lives with what you do. You inspire people to come take care of themselves. People don't come to you to work out. People come to you because they're inspired by you. They're inspired by how you conduct your sessions, how you are able to connect with them on a level that they can't do. They are not doing either already, or they've tried and they've failed. So you have to recognize that, there's value in that. And when you have value, you can set a price point. And when you set your price point, you have to also be able to understand that, yes, not everybody's going to be able to afford it. Some people, it may be too expensive for them, and that's okay. This is how you, again, get yourself narrowed down to who that exact customer is for you. And that's the
Yeah,
formula,
I remember when
eventually.
I remember the first time when I think when I launched the first brand, Alpha Killer Athletics. I remember like wondering like, damn, like how much do I charge people? And like
Hmm.
I didn't, and at the time I didn't really truly understand like like my value. So I kind of just tried to look at like what most people were being traded and kind of just pulled a number out of like thin air and was like, oh, I'm just gonna run with that. But you
Yeah.
know, I didn't, again, but this is, you know,
Hmm.
20 22-year-old, you
Yeah.
know, me,
And you
like
make those
so.
mistakes. That's all part of the game too, because you start to realize you do start to, as you gain mastery and experience in what you're doing, what you're passionate about, the value does go up. Because
Right.
you think about all the times I've read these books, all the knowledge I've taken in, all the practical application, all the bodies I've worked with. I've worked with hundreds of people. You can't buy that experience. That is
Mm-hmm.
something unique to me. So when it comes to a price point of what I charge, that's just the price I'm going to charge. This is what I believe the worth is, and some people will understand that and they'll pay no problem. There's some people say, I can find it somewhere else. Not my customer. That's fine. And there's some people, generally can't afford it. But you know what? They may just go recommend you to someone who can. And that's the value of, again, always
Oh yeah.
being authentic and, again, building those connections, having those conversations. It's funny. Sales used to be a weak point for me. I used to be kind of afraid when I was, younger and, asking for the sale and negotiating sales. Because I always felt, the fear of rejection, or, what about when you get the in between person that necessarily can't afford to pay, but they want to, but they still want to do your service. Well, what do you do? Do I compromise? Do I not compromise? Those used to be one of my weaknesses, but it became a
Mm-hmm.
strength when, again, went back to what the value was, understanding that I wouldn't sell, you wouldn't sell a Maserati for 15,000. You would, it commands a price. It commands a price
Right.
point, and be grateful that you did the work so that you have something that valuable.
I think that's like I think that like that lesson right there took me a little while to realize as well. Like if I put in the work already, then I shouldn't have to hesitate if somebody can't afford or hesitate to give a number that may seem like absurd to somebody because I know
Hmm.
I'm confident in my ability. And again, like you said, like if they can't afford it, then you're not my customer. But there is somebody
Yeah,
out there who they see it, they'll like the number, they'll appreciate it, and they'll go for it. But you know,
absolutely.
definitely like
At the very
understanding
best,
your value.
yeah, and at the very best, you can always become you can always become an endorser, as I call it. Someone who speaks
Mm-hmm.
high, someone who will speak highly of you, someone who will be on the lookout for when you have a promotion or you have some type of giveaway. Someone that's going to be actively involved. I've had many customers that started off like that, who necessarily couldn't afford me at my regular price point, but when I offered a sale, or a perfect example, one of my best months, Amazing May promotion came along, they couldn't say no, and they were able to buy in at that point. And eventually, when they saw the value, it did commit. They understood why the price point was where it was, why the price was so high, when in reality it really wasn't that high. It made sense, and they bought in eventually. And then there's some who do stay for the promotion. That's all they can afford, and you're happy with them. They got results. They got what you wanted. I gained a profit, and now you also are promoting my business actively. They're literally a walking promotion. So you help me grow in the long in the long in
Right,
the long
right.
term. So it's going to come back to me.
Absolutely. All right. So, being an athlete, us both being athletes, I want to get into this conversation now about, first of all, we're going to talk about like the bodybuilding phase that
Oh
you
yeah,
that you went through, and then we're going to get into
oh yeah,
the
Big Nate.
strongman phase, and then we're going to get
Oh
into
yeah, Thanos
this
LTI.
triathlete. So, we're going to start with the bodybuilding phase.
Oh yeah,
Why bodybuilding? Like, tell me, like,
why
what piqued your
bodybuilding?
interest with bodybuilding? Like,
I know it makes me laugh to this day, because people say, "How did you actually get on stage in a we call them posing trunks, but people people say, "Why are you on stage in a thong?" It's like, it's not a thong, it's posing trunks. It's not a thong, it's posing trunks. It's they're like, "Well, no, Nate, that's kind of sus." So it's like, no, it's not. It's no, it's not. It's artwork. In my opinion,
oh my gosh,
it was art. What piqued my interest was,
I get it.
In the beginning, it was the little insecurity of, I want girls to like me. Girls will probably like me if I have bigger muscles, and then I get the bigger muscles, and girls still don't like me. And it was just like, whoa. But I was jacked, so I didn't care at that point. And then when I saw, hey, I can go on stage and win, I ran into a coach, Coach Trey. He was my first coach ever. He said, if you just bring up all the, your lagging muscle groups, you could actually do really well. And he took me under his wing. He showed me exactly how to train, what to eat. He pointed me in the right videos to watch. I must have watched the Ronnie Coleman Unbelievable documentary on like a weekly basis, like religiously for years. That was like my motivation video right there. And I just took what I watched and I applied it. When I did my first show in 2015. I know you and Drace just talked about that photo shoot that I paid him for. That was the photo shoot before I stepped on stage for the first time, actually. So, when I showed up to the shoot and, I take off the shirt and I'm just in pose and I'm just in like my trunks. He's just like, yo, what happened? Yo, there's like veins on your, there's like veins everywhere. I was like, yeah, man, I'm starving. I'm like a day out from the show. I'm hungry.
Oh my gosh.
He's just like, yo, I've never seen.
I don't mean to cut you off, bro, but every time, it reminds me of that day I see you in the cafeteria, in the college cafeteria, that day up in, I think it was like upper north or something like that.
Yep.
And you were sitting in there by yourself, and you just looked so hungry and exhausted, and I'm like, what in the hell is going on? But I had. That's when I realized that you were doing the training, but I was like, Jesus Christ.
I had to win.
You literally you were about to keel over and
You're
die.
a zombie. And that's where people get that misconception that bodybuilding is a healthy sport. It's not a healthy sport. Mm-hmm. It's very far from healthy, actually. If you do it right, you can be okay. But for a majority of people who get into it, the results are very, very disastrous. A lot of people develop eating disorders from the sport. Some people develop, what they call the post-show depression, where you realize, oh, you can't look like that all year round. Eventually, you're going to go back to having, a decent body, but you're not going to look ripped like you did on stage. So if you're not mentally tough to say, oh yeah, this is my off-season body, this is my in-season body, it's really going to mess with your mind, where you're binge eating or on the complete opposite spectrum, not eating enough at all. And, it can really harm you. But, I love the glory. I love the praise. And I loved also being able to inspire large audiences. When I would step on a stage, I always got a lot of commendation on my stage presence. So how I smiled, how I would pose, how I would flex, how I would bring the energy to the stage, bring life to the posing. And when you hear the yelling, you hear the clapping and the cheering, and then you hear people come up to you and they're telling you, man, I wish I could perform that way. Teach me. I want to, that to me, it gave me life. It made me feel good, because even though deep down inside I felt horrible and I didn't necessarily feel the best about myself, I'm happy that someone could take what I was doing, as a coping mechanism to issues I have in my life, and they could better themselves with it. So it was a privilege, in my opinion, to be used in that way. That's what, really brought me into the bodybuilding.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So tell me, what exactly, what year did you kind of start training for it?
Bodybuilding, I did bodybuilding starting in 2008, as a teenager, kind of
right.
I was not so serious about it. I got really serious at age 17. And that's when I was like, I'm definitely going on stage and I'm doing this. I did my first show at 23. And then I retired from bodybuilding. Let's see. I'd retired from bodybuilding age 24. I let it go. I finished off with Classic Physique. No. I let bodybuilding go. Was it 2019? It was right after I got that. It was right after the modeling offer. 2019 was the year I finished, because that's when I finished at the Jay Cutler Classic, and I was also competing over in Connecticut. So I let it go in 2019. That's when I crossed over to strongman, and I started strongman year of 2020. Because strongman 2020. So yeah, that was a good 5. How many years would you say? So 17 to 20, 27.
You said
It would have been 20 because 2020 I would have been. I'm 29 now, so 28, 27 ish. Yeah, so almost about 10 years I did bodybuilding, and then I crossed over to strongman. And strongman for me was very much, it was starting something where I had to be strong inside and out. Strongman taught me a lot about life, because when you do strongman, you can't look strong. You have to be actually strong. I mean, when I got into the strongman and I realized I couldn't even pick up a 60-pound stone and get it to my shoulder, but I looked ripped. It was just like, well, wow, that looks fraudulent. And you feel exposed because you're like, well, how do you have these veins and stuff, but you can't pick up a little? And that's when I was like, well, I have to get strong inside out. I can't just look strong. So I had to learn to eat differently. Again, I had to go back to the books. What do strong men eat? What is the daily life like? Understanding the ins and outs of it, so I can be better at it. I had to learn to live with. Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh yeah.
I just wanted for you just to quickly distinguish, just in case anybody missed it. So, but if you can kind of just distinguish the difference between bodybuilding and strongman for those who don't know.
Oh yeah, so bodybuilding
who may just entertain like this, in the future.
Absolutely. So there is a very big difference with bodybuilding and strongman. Bodybuilding is completely subjective. It's based off looks. It's based off taper and the conditioning of your body. You're shooting for a look. So if you're a bodybuilding male, it's about being the most muscular. If you're a woman's bikini competitor, it's about having the correct proportions, the right physique, and being lightly conditioned to look physically attracting. Strongman is about truly how strong are you when you test the different feats of strength with implements, such as, for example, stones, like big. Great thing I always used to describe strongman when you see guys on TV pulling jets or cars or fire trucks with ropes and stuff like that.
No, I definitely
that is strongman.
Sheesh.
And it's a lot of fun. Strongmen also, some cases they don't look bodybuilding strong. Strongmen are just huge. There's a term we use called "you need a keg to lift a keg." Most strongmen are going to be pretty big. So I had my keg. I loved when I was 220
I've seen it, man. I'll be like, hey,
I had the keg and I loved it.
I'm actually kind of questioning, how heavy is that keg?
Yeah, the keg. Well,
I look at it damn. I don't even know. I feel like I probably can, but obviously learning the technique. I can learn
technique fast,
but
I'm
everything. It looks, but it just looks like. Why does that look like it's? It don't. That shit doesn't it doesn't look easy at all.
And that's also what attracted me to the sport, because I like the my wife says it all the time, you just love to do the extreme stuff. You can't just be somewhere in the middle, Nate. You have to be to the left, to the right, to the up, to the down, and I'm like, well, yeah, some people want
to challenge. Absolutely,
I love the challenge.
I'd love to just know that this bar is all the way up there. Okay, cool.
That's it.
Now you're giving me a reason to go get it.
Exactly. So, that's where strongman comes into play, because you are challenging your strength. You are building true strength. I mean, grip strength. You're building ability to brace. You're building your work capacity. So, some of my best moments came, with strongman, realizing just how strong I actually can be if I mentally lock in, if I stop paying attention to what my looks are at all, and I pay attention to my actual tasks at hand, just how strong I could become. At my best, at my peak in strongman, I was at 215. I could yoke with 600 pounds. I could circus dumbbell press 145.
Wait, what was the first thing you said?
Yoke. So the yoke is when you carry that big frame on your shoulders and you basically run with it for distance. Okay. Got it. Yeah, right, I could do a 600 yoke. I could pull 500 off the ground for dead, with not too much struggle. I could overhead press 225. I could circus dumbbell 145. I mean, the things I used to do, I could shoulder a 225 stone on my shoulder. There were so many different things, and I could also log press over 200 pounds. So it was very much this is so cool, but I know Father Time gonna catch up to me, and my joints are not gonna take this much longer. So I gotta get out of there. Like I can't do it. Physically. I can't. I personally know I can't do it. And at that time, I had just gotten proposed to my wife, and it was one of those things where. Do I spend all this time training, or do I be with my wife? I know where I want to be. I know where I need to be. So, I had to find something, a new sport that fit my new lifestyle. Being a married man, being a full-time worker, and triathlon turned out to be that thing for me. Most people don't know. I couldn't swim until actually this summer. But me and my wife, it's funny.
I still have a problem with like swimming. Like I had to take. I don't know if you did in college, but I had to take basic water swimming safety. I had to take that class, and then like that was like, it wasn't like a super struggle for me, but it was just like it exposed my conditioning absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Like when she was like, yeah, the only way you can really pass this class is if like you're able to swim the length of the pool.
Yep.
Mind you, like I had no idea that everybody had like swam the length of the pool. I was the only one. By the end of that semester, who hadn't done it yet. I was like, when the hell did the rest of y'all do this?
Yep.
So now
Ask me how many swim instructors I've had in my life.
Oh, my God. Forget it.
I've had 8.
I tried it as a child. And I was a punk. I was like, Mama, don't take me out of swimming. I was like, I am not doing this. I am going to die drowning. I don't want this. Take me out.
I've had 8 people try to teach me. That's how unteachable I am. So I always had in my head that, you know what? God didn't put me on this earth to swim, so I just gave it up. I let it go. I was like, 8 people have tried to teach me, including my own clients have tried to teach me. One of my favorite clients of all time, Leslie. She was a college level diver, and she was a fish. She could swim laps. No, I barely got to the end of the pool, and I probably drank half the pool in chlorine by the time I got down there. I never learned it until I moved to Florida, until it was basically I was kind of not put into the situation. I'll tell you how it happened. I was, my wife, she has a very good way of challenging me. And, we were talking one day, and, we were something we were talking about. I forgot what it was. We couldn't come to an agreement on it, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to go swim. And I was like, I go down to the pool. I walk down to the pool. We have a pool in the backyard, and I'm looking at the pool, and I'm panicking. I'm like, well, I didn't mean I was gonna learn today, and I was just like, well, I can't go back on my word now. I already told her I'm gonna go swim. So it started with exposure therapy. Kidding you, I still have it saved in my phone. I literally would wake up because I didn't want anybody to see me, and no life. So I wake up at 5 to go to the pool. To stand on the 3-foot end of the pool, just stand in the water and see how long I could stand in the water without freaking out and panicking. In my first session, I lasted exactly 5 minutes, 12 seconds. And I had to get out of the water. That's truly where it started. Then it was like the next day I did it for 6 minutes. The next day after that, I did it for 7 minutes. And then I did it for 8, I did it for 9, I did it for 15. I got up to about 10 minutes and I said, okay, I'm going to try to float for just 60 seconds. And I got 6 seconds and I put my feet immediately back on the ground. Then, 90 seconds, put my feet immediately back on the ground. And I started to get more relaxed, started to get more calm. And, out here in Florida, we have these really nice sunrises. I started to just gaze and look at the sunrise. And then eventually I just find myself naturally floating. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is kind of nice. But I didn't know what to do next. So I started to watch, YouTube videos on how to swim and so forth. And I would take what I learned on the YouTube videos and apply them to the pool that we have here. That's only like 5 feet deep at its max. So I can stand up no matter what. And it started with the breaststroke. I learned the breaststroke and, it was very inefficient. It would take me like 5 minutes to get from one end to the other, but my foot never touched the floor. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm swimming. And then I said, well, let me try the front crawl. And then, I'm like splashing the water and I do like a few fronts. I do like 4 arm pulls and then I'd be tired and I'd have to go back to breast. But I did a little front crawl there. And eventually I was able to do a length and that turned into lengths. That turned into a 10-minute swimming workout that burned me calories. That turned into a half hour. And, here we are now, December of 2022, having started in July of 2022. I'm swimming the Olympic pool now. It's 14 feet deep. No problem. I do 100 meter lengths. Like, it's fine. It's a workout. Like, I can do a good half hour to 45 minutes of just pool work with pool boys, with the thins. I mean, it's a lot of fun. And it was like, I already bike hard. I already I have a background in running. Now that I actually can do it, I can do a triathlon. And I immediately signed up for my first one. Once I saw I could swim, all I need to do is just be a better swimmer. I already put a date on it. I was like, July 7th, Fort DeSoto Olympic Triathlon, Olympic distance. Half-mile swim, 20-mile bike, 6.2 run. It's doable. Let's go. Yep, let's do it. And I got swim. I have a Olympic swim coach now, so she's like refining me. So I did the groundwork, learning some stuff, but now I'm actually getting good coaching. Yeah,
you know, it's so amazing that that we sometimes forget that even like as like coaches, like even like we need coaches. Like, you know, like sometimes I feel like everybody feels like we're like an expert at like everything, and I'm like,
oh no,
listen, I know I couldn't tell you diddly squat. I mean, I might, you know, I might be like a multi-athlete, but believe me, even myself, like,
yeah, I
still need a coach. Like, I
absolutely
use a coach because I'm just like, I don't know everything, and I'm like, I need somebody who's been here longer than me, and they know more, and they can help refine my.
You don't grow if you don't have one.
For you.
Exactly. I mean, you don't grow if you're not learning. You know, I mean, I have things I don't like to do either. If you I mean, look how long I swept swimming under the rug. I mean, I laugh about it all the time with Andres, but I did a whole photo shoot at the beach coming out of the water, and I know I can't swim. Everybody knows you can't get in the water, Nate. Like, it's cap. It was all cap. You know what I mean? Like, it was just funny. Like, I have to have a coach. I mean, I've had a coach pretty much my entire athletic career. Coach Trey was my bodybuilding coach. Coach Mike was my strongman coach. And now Rachel is my swim coach. So he helps me with my swimming and so forth. So, you know, coaches find the things that you necessarily don't want to work on, but they tell you what you need to work on. A good coach will find what you need to do and make sure that you do it. And that's what I appreciate, that accountability. And also it's humility on our part to say, yeah, I need help. You know, it's okay that I need help. You know, yeah, I'm LTI, I'm your coach, but I need a coach too, you know?
Absolutely. No, I'm the same way. I wish I had like coaching like early on, you know, because I've been an athlete since like 6 years old, and I have never had like actual like personal coach to really teach me like the ins and outs. It wasn't until like 16 that I actually learned, like, I heard the term strength and conditioning. Like, I actually like learned how to like lift and stuff like that. It wasn't until 16 that like before then it was just me just going out doing sports, just doing static stretches, not knowing that I'm not supposed to be doing static stretches at the beginning.
You're doing the Damian Lillard YouTube video. You're doing whatever you saw, like, the Kobe motivation video, but not knowing where those clips even came from, if that was at practice or pregame. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm like, it took me a minute to like realize, like, yo, like, I imagine like where I could have been had I had like coaching early on, and like where my body would be like now, like, because I feel like I've, you know, what I have now, I mean, thank God, it's just I'm, you know, genetically blessed, so I haven't had to do.
Some people just have it.
I haven't had to do too much work, but it was just the fact that if I had somebody in my ear a lot earlier, I most definitely feel like I could be like a pro athlete.
For me, and that I feel
could be a pro athlete.
And I feel that exact same way. Like, whatever sport I fall in love with, like, I have that. One thing about me, like a trait I have, is I have an ability to really just focus on like one particular thing. Like, I can't just do something halfway. Like, my wife will tell you, you have to know she'll say, you have to just know the ins and outs of everything. Like, you become almost obsessive over it, you know, which is good, you know, in that sense, because you're like, you're going to find the best way. You're going to find what works. I mean, if I learned how to swim, you know, years ago, I think about, man, how I could have done triathlon so much sooner, because it's a lot of fun and I really do enjoy it. It's not like, you know, I'm struggling to learn the swimming and the technique. It's just that I'm just a beginner, you know. But imagine if I did have those years of practice in swimming. Man, I'd be, who knows? Who
Nah,
knows?
most definitely. I feel that for sure. Um, all right. So through your journey so far, like, from 2008 to like right now, what have you learned about yourself, and what are you currently still learning about yourself? Like, what are you still
Hmm.
working on, improving on?
Absolutely. Well, one of the biggest things I learned, came from the year, in 2017 when I found out, exactly, that I had PTSD and I had OCD as well as anxiety. That was probably one of the biggest things I learned about myself, particularly because it helped me understand, why it helped me understand how my trauma was really impacting like my life decisions, the choices I made. And once I understood like what I had and why I did the things I did, why I was wired the way I was, it helped me learn how to manage and how to cope. It helped me understand, gain tools of how do I live, in this world with anxiety? How do I live with PTSD? How do I, deal with these things and not have, outbursts or have attacks? What do I do when I have an attack? I have a wife now. Like, how do I tell her what to do if she sees me having a moment or I'm struggling? How do I help her help me, in those types of situations? Having the answers allow me to do, again, more research and figure out how do I live? One of the biggest things, I learned is just how much, exercise really is my drug of choice for managing my mental health order disorders that I have. I don't treat with medication. I tried that once at one point in my life, did not work for me. But the natural high of exercising always works. I've never had a bad reaction with it, and it's always helped me. So you combine that with prayer, meditation, and having a great wife. That
Mm-hmm.
is my system. That is my oasis. That is what keeps LTI together. I've learned I cannot do life. I cannot do things on my own. I am not that strong. I'm actually very frail. I need help. I need friends. I need love. I need support. My wife will tell you I'm a teddy bear. I need hugs. I need attention. So
We all
knowing
do.
that
We all need it.
I need a team and I have a team. I have great friends that I can call. Not even friends, my brothers. I have to have that teamwork. I have to have that support. And most importantly, I have to have that close relationship with God. Most importantly, that's what I've learned in those
Absolutely.
last 10 years.
Mm. All right. So I have a segment on my podcast called Game, GAME. It's broken down as gems about me. So I'll ask a question or a statement, and you just answer it to the best of your ability.
Sure,
None of your answers will be judged. So however you want to answer it, it's all up to you. All right.
absolutely.
So first one is, my name is, and I am.
My name is Nathaniel Young, and I'm Mr. LTI.
First thing I do when I wake up is.
Read my Bible and get some exercise in.
mm, Early bird or night owl.
Early bird all day.
I think you might have just answered this, but to cope with stress, I.
Cope with stress, pray, meditate, exercise, and talk to my
Mm.
wife.
Yo, I think Dre. What did Dre? I think Dre said the same thing. He's like, I think that was one of his answers. Like, I talked to my wife. I was like, oh, interesting.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, it ain't about me no more. If I'm
Right,
walking around with an
absolutely.
angry face, she, it's like, what did I? I can't have her like, well, what did I do? She's got it. She needs to
Hmm.
know. Be kept in the
Right.
loop.
No, you're not. You are right. You are right. Definitely. All right. This one here, I think I might know the answer, but strongman or bodybuilding.
Oh, absolutely. Strongman all day. Definitely strongman. I love bodybuilding because of the tools I gained in bodybuilding, but strongman is where my heart is all day. I love to eat. I love to lift heavy things. I love to not have to look strong. I love actually being strong in that way. Got to go with the strongman community all day.
Hmm. Who is someone in the industry that you would like to meet
There's
that
a
you
few.
haven't met
There's a
yet?
few. Yeah, absolutely. The first person I would love to meet is Dan John. Actually, I actually talked with Dan a couple of times over 2020 I actually had the pleasure of speaking with him over the phone, and he's just a very down to earth and very humble person. I have
You
actually
might just you might just
Yeah,
like
for
telling
those who
like, the
don't
audience
know.
like who he is.
Absolutely.
So that way they know.
Dan John is actually, he's a former Olympian. He's actually still an Olympic weightlifting athlete, and he coaches. He also does seminars. He's a public speaker. He has a ton of different books. Some of his noteworthy ones are Fat Loss Made Easy, Can You Go, Before We Go, and some of his other, and Mass Made Simple. His books are basically his philosophy on life, on lifting, on training, and he just makes things very clear. And I think he does his writing in a way that that every everyday person can benefit, not just an exercise professional who knows the ins and outs of exercise, but someone who just wants to understand, how do I get 1% better each day. He's one of those top 2 people I want to meet, along with oh boy, what's his name? I'm blanking on his name. Mike Boyle. He's another person I failed to meet when I was in Boston.
I met him. Gosh, I think the last time when I went up there a few months ago. To his facility up in Woburn.
Yeah. Yep. MBSC.
I met him firsthand. I was up there with Ben Connolly.
Yep.
I was training
Coach
with
Cannoli,
Ben Connolly,
as I call him.
Yeah, Coach Cannoli. But yeah, I met him. I was like, damn, like this is like, yeah, you are the man, the myth right here. I'm meeting him right now. So like,
yeah,
it was nice talking to him. So I'm actually very happy to say that I've met him.
I can imagine, yeah. Because I mean, one thing Ben always told me about him too is that he'll always remember something about you. Like no matter whatever client you are, athlete, he'll always remember a name and he'll remember something about you that connects you. So that to me, that's impressive, because he deals with large groups. So to be able to do that, I think that's real. That shows just the quality and where his business is, and it shows me what he prioritizes. If you can't connect with your audience, if you don't, connect with them and you really make them feel valued, even so much as remembering a name, that goes such a long way when it comes to retention. So that's big.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, one last thing. What are you manifesting for 2023?
For me, for 2023, I think for me, it's to continue to, again, learn to be married, learn to be a husband, continue to grow as a husband, continue to grow as a spiritual man, to definitely improve as a triathlete. So I definitely want to get my first triathlon out of the way, but ultimately I want to progress to Ironman distance triathlon. So that's one thing I'm manifesting, to build my endurance. And someone asked me this the other day. So my New Year's resolution, learn to cook with ingredients I've never used. That's another thing I'm manifesting. I've never heard of a parsnip. I've never used that before. There's so many things I haven't cooked with yet that I'm like, I'm learning to cook with and learn to like, so that's a big one for me. But as far as LTI, you ain't getting it out of me. You just have to fight. You just have to wait and see. Like everyone else, trust me. People ask me, get back on, social media, bring LTI back. I'm like, LTI will come back when it's time.
Listen, when it's time. Exactly, timing.
Listen, when it's time. Right now, I'm enjoying being
the
married.
bigger plan. So listen, it'll show up when it needs to.
Yep.
All right. One last thing before we kind of wrap it up. What gems would you give to those aspiring to get into, say, like the bodybuilding or becoming a triathlete or strongman? Like, what would you say to those who are like, I'm interested in it, but I'm just kind of they're a little stubborn about taking that first step.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I always say, I always like to get the big picture. Before, when you think about trying to get into bodybuilding or triathlon or strongman, think about your lifestyle and how that would affect your lifestyle and how you would implement that into your lifestyle. Think about what you're already doing now. If you're a casual gym goer who only goes every now and then, or if you're like a frequent person who's going all the time, think about what you're going to need to do if you're interested in getting into those sports. when you think about bodybuilding, it's a very much it's a full on commitment. Bodybuilding is not. It can be a very selfish sport, and a lot of your personal relationships can suffer because of it. So understanding, what lifestyle you want to live and understanding how that affects those around you. With strongman, better have the funds because you're gonna have to eat a lot. So you got your grocery bills going double, triple. Understand you gotta have some coins, and understand that cardio, doing long cardio or endurance training, not gonna work. You're gonna have to. It requires your full commitment. Understand the demands. And as far as triathlon too, my biggest thing that I learned was, again, education, because everything with triathlon is completely different from strongman and bodybuilding. I don't eat the same. I don't train the same. I only actually weight train twice a week for about 50 minutes each, as opposed to a strongman, you're doing like 4 days, bodybuilding sometimes 4-6 days. I do only 2 weight training sessions a week, and they're circuit training. But I hit about 6 to 8 different sessions of run, bike, and swim in with varying combinations throughout the week. So understand where your time's going to be spent. Right. Think about, what kind of work you do. So if you're a sedentary person and you're just sitting all day, think about, if you're pounding calories all day to keep up, to gain weight and, lift these heavy loads, what that's going to do to your body long term, not getting enough activity, not moving around enough. If you're someone who's always on the go, you work for UPS or something like that, you're getting 20,000 steps a day. Are you really about to come home and, do a 10-mile run? You got to think about, how your lifestyle is, how that's going to fit into your lifestyle. If you're a family man with, 5 mouths to feed, can you really afford to eat 10 ounces of chicken breasts every meal, or everybody else is getting, a little bone or something? You have to, it has to make sense. Make it make sense. Right. So think about your life and whole, and then make your decision about what you're going to dive into. Because I've seen it too many times. Being in the fitness industry 10 years, people get into something and they don't think about what that's actually going to look like for you 3 months from now, 6 months from now, even a month from now. It's you already sit 40 hours a week and you come to me about back pain. You eating more and continuing to do things that don't require you to move throughout the day, it's not helping your cause. You got to think the think.
Yep. You're right. I've heard it a million times.
Yep. Think.
All right.
That's my big gem.
So, if you could just leave us off with the best gem that you've ever heard.
Mm-hmm. The best gem. That's a tough
gem. It's a gem. Well, okay. Let's phrase it this way: a gem a gem that you kind of just you walk by it faithfully every day.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm
Absolutely.
sure everybody's got many of them. I have many of them, but there's always just one. It's just every day. Yep. I remember this. I can repeat it back to somebody, and this is the first thing I would tell you.
Absolutely. It's actually a question, believe it or not, my gem, because I ask this question to myself on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis. It's taken from Dan John. It was actually the name of one of his books that he wrote that I loved. It's called Can You Go? And the idea behind that phrase, can you go? When you ask yourself, can you go? It's, no matter what's going on in your life or what's actually happening, the car broke down, your food is spoiled, whatever. Can you still go? Can you still make it to the gym? Can you still get this session? Can you still do what I need of you? If the answer is yes, then let's go. If the answer is no, then go home. I don't need you. If you're in a game, right? And I need you to make the game winning shot. I don't care that, you've had a bad day, your ex-girlfriend or whatever broke your heart and, that happened in the day. Can you make the shot? Because we need to win the game. If the answer is yes, let's go. If the answer is no, well, then go home. You wasted, what's the point of you being this great if when I need you, you failing me, So when I find myself in hard, difficult situations or I find myself discouraged, my dad would do it to me all the time, especially when it would come showtime and I'd be hungry, trying to get on that stage or at my strongman event, I will hear him, yell. He will say, "Can you go, Nate?" And, that will snap me into my mindset of, Well, I'm not finna say no. Yes, I can. Doesn't matter what I'm going through. Yes, I can go. I can always go. That's my question. So whatever you're going through, it's like my clients tell you all the time. Will tell you all the time. Don't bring your stories to Nate because he's gonna ask you that question, and you're gonna have to hold it. Because doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you party. Doesn't matter if you didn't do what you were supposed to do on your homework. And this is what I had planned for you. If you did your work, and now we're gonna have to readjust, or we're gonna have to scale back. I'm gonna ask the same question. All right, but can you go? And it's just like, all right, Nate. It's just like, yeah, all right. All right then, let's go.
Oh my gosh, yo, that's fire though. I love that, bro. I love that. That's a first. I think that's the first one. That's the first gem that's actually been posed as a question. But I love that.
Yep.
All right, audience. It was a great conversation we had here. Make sure y'all follow. Actually, quickly, drop your socials and stuff like that so people can tap in with you before we close it out.
Yep. Yes, sir. Follow Millennial Gems Podcast. And of course, and depending on if I know you, I might accept your friend request. You can follow me at NYLTI if I know you. That's my personal account. So if I say yes, because we cool. Like if I don't say yes, well then wait for when LTI does his thing, and then we can be friends
that's right.
on that platform. Yep.
Heard you.
Sorry.
All right, guys.
Not sorry.
I feel it. It's all right. It's understood. As Nate said, make sure y'all following the podcast, Millennial Gems podcast. Make sure you also subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on those post notifications. Also, you can also find me, your boy KILLA ATM_fit&biz. It's been another great episode of Millennial Gems podcast. Make sure y'all stay blessed, stay gemmed up.